Hello and welcome. You've tuned in to the School of Ministry podcast. Paul is your Bible teacher today. If you have questions you would like addressed, let us know. Maybe you have a need in your life and want to know how the Bible gives answers that apply to us today. Feel free to contact us. Now enjoy the lesson.
We're talking about Elisha. In our world, nations specialize in various techniques and methods for spying. There's all kinds of intrigue and all kinds of stealth, and they want to get the best information that they possibly can. And whenever there is a leak in the military or in some area of technology, those secrets that have been gathered are used to help win battles for this side or that side. We see that in the news from time to time. We hear about it, and usually it's a long while after the event has taken place that we find out about that. How does that relate in our Christian life? My question is, how big is your God? What is your God able to accomplish? He doesn't need spies. He doesn't need better stealth technology. We have before us the revelation of the character of God, and that's what we're going to be examining today. Trusting God means that we look beyond our circumstances. We look beyond what we can see to see what God is doing and what God sees. Know that God is able to do abundantly beyond all that we could ask or think. God is able and does answer prayer. When we have a low view of God, it carries out in our life. What we believe about God has an effect how we live. And a low view of God will cause all kinds of lesser evils. So a right concept of God is really basic to our theology, but it's basic to practical living. What you know of God will determine how we live. Theology and understanding God, it is to our worship what the foundation of the temple was. And if it's out of plumb, if it's out of alignment, eventually it will begin to crack and you'll begin to have problems. And the structure sooner, usually later, will collapse. And I believe there's sometimes a scarcity in applying the truths, the Word of God and Christian ethics that cause us then to live beneath where we can be living for the Lord. And so let's look at 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 8. Says, now the king of Syria was making war against Israel, and he consulted with his servants, saying, my camp will be in such and such place. So here is the king of Syria. It's likely that his name is Ben-Hadad II, and he's making war. He's sending raid parties into Israel, and he's raiding parts of Israel. And this Syrian king sending these wants to plunder, and he wants to get what he can in pillaging some areas of the Israelite, that northern kingdom. In doing this, we remember just back in chapter 5, the king of Syria sent to the king of Israel his general, and he said, I hear that there is a man of God who can heal. And he sends a man by the name of Naaman who has leprosy to go and be healed. Ben-Hadad had resumed hostilities after he had sent Naaman, and Naaman comes back and he's been healed from his leprosy by meeting and hearing the instruction from Elisha. So those normal relations were already poor, but you would have thought, well, the gratitude of kings would have lasted for some while, but maybe kings and their gratitude is short-lived. His chief officer is saying, and this is in his encampment, he's telling them, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And then it comes up to verse 9, and the man of God sent to the king of Israel saying, beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are coming down there. The man of God, Elisha. Now, we understand the king of Israel at this time is Jehoram, and this Elisha is the servant that served Elijah. Remember Elijah, that prophet that prayed, and 450 prophets of Baal, and fire came down from heaven? He prayed, and for 3.5 years there was no rain in Israel. We remember that chariot that came and took him up, and the mantle comes back and falls to his servant Elisha. That's who we're looking at now. Now Elisha is receiving supernatural revelation, and he is continued and he is identified to Jehoram what Israelite towns the king of Syria is planning to attack. And Jehoram takes those proper precautions. He's watching out. In our day and age, we send spies, and that's what the king of Syria thinks. Wait a minute. Who's been spying? Who's telling my stories? By the way, I'm going to just preface this to say that Elisha does not have warm feelings toward Jehoram. He really doesn't care for the king of Israel. It says in 2 Kings 3:13 and 14, "Then Elisha said to the king of Israel, 'What have I to do with you? Go to the prophets of your father and the prophets of your mother.' But the king of Israel said to him, 'No, for the Lord has called these three kings together to gather them into the hand of Moab.' And Elisha said, 'As the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, surely were it not that I regard the presence of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, I would not look on you nor see you.'" That's what Elisha is thinking of this king. And yet, what does he do? He goes in and he's telling the king, this is what the Assyrians are going to do. This is what they're going to do from Syria. In verse 10, "Then the king of Israel sent someone to the place of which the man of God had told him. Thus he warned him, and he was watchful there not just once or twice." So the prophet's instructions are heeded by the king, and they want to send out a party to see, is this really what's taking place? Is the king of Syria sending people in? And word comes back that everything that Elisha is telling the king is exactly true. Look at verse 11. "Therefore, the heart of the king of Syria was greatly troubled by this thing. And he called his servants and said to him, 'Will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel?'" Which of us? The Syrian king is sure that someone in his household is telling his secrets. He's got a spy. He's got a spy in the midst. Somebody's getting in all of this knowledge. How is it that the king of Israel would know where we were planning to attack, who we were going to pillage? Therefore, the heart of the king of Syria is troubled. It expresses that idea of being troubled or a disturbance. Remember, Jonah gets in the boat. God says, "You're going to go to Nineveh," and he gets on a boat going to Tarshish. Hey, I just happen to have enough money to get to Tarshish. And the scripture says that there was troubled, a disturbance, a raging sea. It's the same word used here. That's what Jehoram, the king of Syria, is feeling. He's troubled. He's upset. It's like a roaring wave within him. Tell me, who's telling my secrets? Was there a microphone? No. How could he have known? How could they know? Were they listening by a secret spy satellite? None of those things, of course. There is a God in heaven. There is a God in heaven. And here's the truth. Our God is all-knowing. He is omniscient. You cannot escape anywhere in your mind. You cannot hide your thoughts from him. Our God knows our thoughts. He knows our emotions. He knows all about us. In Psalm 139, verses 1 through 4, it says, "O Lord, you have searched me and know me. You know my sitting down and my rising up. You understand my thoughts afar off. You comprehend my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word on my tongue, but behold, O Lord, you know it altogether." Have you ever been mad? Mad at God? Well, I can't get mad at God. He's God. But he knows your thoughts. You might as well just be honest. You might as well just come out and say, "God, I'm mad. I don't like this." And you know what? He's a big enough God to handle it. He can handle your anger. He can handle your emotions. He knows it. And sometimes we think, well, I'm just not going to tell God. I'm not going to tell God about my disappointments. I'm not going to tell him about this. But he knows. He understands everything you're going through, and he loves us in spite. He loves us so much that he sent Christ to die for us. Let's pick up in verse 12. "And one of his servants said, 'None, my lord, O king, but Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom.'" God knows our thoughts. He knows our hearts. He knows everything. And one of those that's interrogated say, "Are you the spy? Are you the one who's for the king of Israel?" He says, "No, my lord." And literally it's, "Think not so. Do not suppose that." That's the idea of the original. There's no traitor in your camp. There's no traitor in your court. We're all true men. And he explains the situation is very different. But Elisha, the prophet that is in Israel. Now, remember in verse 9, we read about Elisha and it said, the man of God. Like there's no other man of God. Elisha, the man of God. This is the one. He's above all others, and he's spoken as if there was no other. And he tells the king of Israel, the words that you speak in your bedchamber, literally the secret place of your bedchamber, that secret place, because God knows the secret place. Have you ever had a place where you thought, nobody sees me, nobody knows what I'm doing, no one knows what I'm thinking? Let me tell you, it's not as secret as you might think. There is nowhere to hide from God. There is nowhere to hide. You cannot compartmentalize in our brain and think, well, God doesn't see that. He doesn't know that. He doesn't know my secret sin. He knows. He knows every bit of us. And so how the Syrian Lord knew this, maybe it's a guess. Can't say. Elisha's gifts as a prophet, the miraculous gifts that he has as a prophet, they must have been widely known throughout Syria because after all, Naaman had been healed. The king sent him down there to be healed, and Naaman himself, everyone would have recognized, wow, he came back. He was a leper, he's healed. So it's not that Syria doesn't know something about this man of God. In verse 13, it says, this is Ben-Hadad. So he said, go and see where he is, that I may send and get him. So there he is. I'm going to go get this guy. And it was told him, surely he is in Dothan. So the object is not to find out through Elisha or through the king of Israel who's plotting against him. The idea is we're going to get Elisha. We're going to get this man of God. And the spies sent back word that Elisha is living in Dothan. And the idea is, let's stop God telling this man. Now, that's my translation. That's what the heart of the king of Syria is. We got to stop God. How big is your God? Can you stop God? How big is your God? Now, Dothan was kind of a key mountain pass so that Elisha, he could see those that were coming just by this very place. And then it tells us in verse 14, therefore he sent, that is the king of Syria, horses and chariots and a great army there, and that they might come by night and surrounded the city. Now here's a strong force, a great force, not like those that were pillaging before. This is something different. This great army, greater than those smaller raiding parties. So the king of Syria sends a sizable force, horses, chariots, footmen, with one goal. We're going to get Elisha. We're going to get this guy. And arriving at Dothan, what do? They surround the town. Verse 15, and when the servant of the man of God arose early and went out, there was an army surrounding the city with horses and chariots. And his servant said to him, alas, my master, what shall we do? Man always comes up with a scheme, but God's ways cannot be schemed against. God's ways are always true. There's no possible way for them to escape. That's what the servant thinks. They've surrounded us. What can we do? What shall we do? Alas, my master, what shall we do? When we focus on our challenges, when we focus on our troubles, we become alarmed. And we might say, what am I going to do? But when we focus on God and on the unseen God, the God of heaven, the God that knows every person's thoughts, not just mine, not just ours here, every person. God can hear prayers that are happening right now throughout the United States. And what about in Mexico? What about in Brazil? What about in China? What about in Russia? What about in Europe? People all over the world. He hears every single one, and he knows every person's thoughts. How big is your God? Mind-boggling when we think of that our God knows every thought. And when we begin to see God in who he is, it changes the picture radically, doesn't it? It changes it. And finally, maybe now our hearts find some peace. What are you going through that's too big for God to handle? What is it that God can't take care of? The servant of the man of God, Elisha's servant. And I'm just wondering if it was the noise of the armies that woke him up, that were coming around the city, that he rose early, and a host compassed the city. It's a force of footmen and chariots and all kinds of horsemen crying out, alas, my master, what shall we do? The servant could not know that it was Elisha that they were personally after. He just sees that we're surrounded by the enemy. We're surrounded by a host that's out to get us. Does he anticipate they're going to kill him? Capture him, make him a slave? So when he cries out, alas, his cry, what shall we do? Can we save ourselves? Can we save ourselves in any way? I love verse 16. Those with us. So he answered, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. That's Elisha's answer. Elisha didn't need to see the forces that were arrayed. He knew. Did Elisha see them or did he just know? It doesn't tell us. It doesn't tell us what's happened. But Elisha knew God. He knew God's strength. He knew God's power. He knew God was with him. And he cared not who or how many or others that might be against him. If the Lord is for you, who can be against you? If the Lord's in your life and watching over, Psalm 3 and 6, the psalmist says, I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me all around. Or Psalm 23 and 3, though an army may encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war may rise against me, in this I will be confident. And it tells us in verse 17 why Elisha was confident. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. Then the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. Elisha didn't pray that the servant would stop seeing the enemy. He just prayed that they would see what God could do. He just prayed to see the goodness and the provision of God. Trusting God means looking beyond what we can see to what he sees. Elisha understood this, and he looked beyond his own possible limitation, his own limited perspective, to see God's reality. Because of his faith, God showed Elisha amazing things, miracles. And the Lord gave his servant the ability to see what was normally unseen, an unseen world of God's heavenly armies here waiting to do battle with the Syrians. But let me tell you what's next. The army of God doesn't have to fight the Syrians. God sent his army for one man, for the servant of Elisha, so that he would see, so that he would be calmed. You know, there are times that we don't see what's going on, but maybe God sent his army just to surround you, just to protect you. And we're not aware. He sent his army to reassure this servant that he's got to see that there was a help at the hand of God, that he would be able to find rest and peace and the assurance that God was near, and that he would keep the prophet from harm. And this mental state required this material manifestation. He had to see that God was everywhere, that God was employing all the things that were necessary so that he could stand fast and stand firm. The prayers granted, the Lord opens the eyes of the young man, and he saw. Has God ever placed a hedge of protection around you? Maybe you can think of a time he watched over you. Behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. That earthly force that had been alarming Elisha's servant, a force mainly of horses and chariots, but now the heavenly force is revealed. And the idea is that this is a force where their chariots of fire, it says that they glow. I can imagine what it would be to have to face the army of God that's glowing with a strange, unearthly brightness. Look at verse 18. So when the Syrians came down to him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, strike this people, I pray, with blindness. And he struck them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. God doesn't have to use his army. God sent the army. That took care of Elisha's servant. Elisha just prays, and it strikes all the Syrians with blindness. You know, this word blindness occurs here, and it's also found in Genesis 19:11. Remember, there were some that wanted the angel, and God struck them with blindness. And the term is related to light, and it's maybe because of the dazzling bright light, maybe from the chariots of fire. We don't know. God's army of angels is sent for one person's peace of mind. And God is doing still today what he's always been able to do. Here, Elisha prays, and the servant saw, and the enemies are blinded, and he strikes these people. Now, some Bible scholars say this isn't literal blindness, that this somehow is just a bewilderment, because now Elisha takes them about 12 miles. He's going to march the army. This army has already come down from Damascus, so they've been a long way. Now he's going to march them another 12 miles to Samaria. Whether they were blinded, and I think literally that's what it means. Some say, well, they were just bewildered. They couldn't perceive. They couldn't couldn't really understand. But verse 19, now Elisha said to them, this is not the way, nor is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. But he led them to Samaria. Follow me to the man that you're looking for. Well, by going to Samaria himself, Elijah really doesn't lie. And I've heard some people say, it's okay to lie. Is Elisha lying here? No, because he does lead them to Samaria where they would see him, where they would find him. It's the same idea. Is it a lie for a soldier who's in the trench to take a helmet, put it up on a stick, see if it gets shot at? I don't think that's a lie. I don't think Elisha is lying here. Elisha does tell the truth that they're going to find him. Follow me, I'll bring you to whom you seek. And he led them to Samaria. Whether this is physical blindness or some miraculous delusion doesn't really matter. The fact is that they followed him to the capital without any hesitation. Why? Because God is still present here. God doesn't leave them alone. They're following right along. I cannot imagine what this would have looked like. There were maybe others around in the city of Dothan, but the first comer, Elisha, says, I know where you're going. Come on, I'll lead you. Verse 20. So it was when they had come to Samaria that Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and they were inside Samaria. Inside Samaria. Here is a great miracle. Elisha just marches the army right into their capital. He's taken them all captive, hasn't he? God delivers a sizable force, the portion of Syria's army, into the hands of the king of Israel without bloodshed. The Syrians discover they're inside the capital. They've been taken captives. They return now to their proper senses, and they realize we're helpless. You see, that's what we need to see our God. He renders the enemy helpless. He is there for you. Verse 21, here's the king of Israel. Now when the king of Israel saw them, he said to Elisha, my father, shall I kill them? Shall I kill them? My father is a term that's used here of respect. Because remember what we read back in 2 Kings in chapter 3, I have nothing to do with you. Well, now the king of Israel has a lot of respect for Elisha. And in his joy at the deliverance of such a large force into his hand, now Elisha could have said, kill them all. It's not what's going to happen. Elisha hands them over. The king wants to kill them. And according to Old Testament law, they were told when you take an army, you destroy all of the males. You kill them, whether they've surrendered themselves or not. That was common back in that day. When a group or a person was spared, it was usually because of some consideration of the relationship. In Deuteronomy 20 and 12 and 13, it says, now if the city will not make peace with you, but war against you, then you shall besiege it. And when the Lord your God delivers it into your hands, then you shall strike every male in it with the edge of the sword. So now Jehoram is excited, and he says it twice, and that's why it's in your scriptures 2 times, because I've got them. You brought them right into my hands. In verse 22, but he answered, you shall not kill them. Would you kill those whom you have taken captive with your sword or your bow? Set food and water before them that they may eat and drink and go to their master. You shall not kill them. Elisha, he is bearing the authority as the man of God, that delegated authority. And he could have said, yes, let's execute him. But no, the miraculous power of God is recognized by the Syrians that they've been brought into captivity by the hand of God. Dealing with these enemies out of kindness, it testifies of the goodness of God. It tells them, and maybe this would also lessen future Syrian raids. Maybe this would help. Because you know what? Kind deeds can do an awful lot, can't they? When these prisoners, they weren't slain, they were the object of God's miracle, and had they been slain, it would have frustrated the whole purpose of God, wouldn't it? Because the intention was to show the Syrians, the prophet of God had to show them the true God. He could show them no human power could avail against the God of heaven. They had to learn the fear of the Almighty God. Well, would you kill those who you've taken captive with the sword and your bow? Instead, what does he tell them to do? Verse 23, then he prepared a great feast for them, and after they ate and drank, he sent them away, and they went to their master. So the bands of Syrian raiders came no more into the land of Israel. The word is a great feast. This is not just bread and water. Now, as I said, they've come all the way from Damascus into Dothan, and now another 12 miles into Samaria, because the Syrians had found out that they could not accomplish what they thought, but God was going to accomplish what he wanted. So the bands, it implies that the whole group ceased their raiding. Elisha the prophet, who's in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. Nothing is hidden from God. Not a word, not a thought. Just as the Lord revealed to Elisha, do not fear, for there is nothing concealed that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. That's what Christ said. Everything is going to be revealed. Trusting God means looking beyond what we can see to what God sees. He does it today through his word. He shows us today through his word. You can read it, you can hear it, you can understand it. You know, we have some beautiful lessons here, don't we? The God who sends in chariots of fire and pledges a hedge of angels around us. God's mighty warriors, whose God is the God of Elisha, that knows our thoughts, that knows how to accomplish and win the battle that we cannot win. As the enemy army comes and approached, Elijah says, strike these people with blindness, I pray, and it happens. Well, today God's not working miracles like that, but let me tell you that God is still answering prayer. And when we are on our knees, so the best way to fight a battle today is to fight it on your knees, to take it to the Lord. Fight all of your battles on your knees. Our focus today is on faith. God's protection, seeing with spiritual eyes. That's the key to seeing God's power and his force. And even when we come and we're fearful, and sometimes we come into his presence and we ought to be fearful, and we see God do what only God can do. And when we're surrounded by all kinds of trouble, fall on your knees. We need to see beyond our circumstances. That's what Elisha found here. The servant saw only the Syrian army. Elisha saw God, and then he saw God's army. How do we overcome fear? Fear is a powerful force that can cause us to feel trapped. But recognizing God's protection, recognizing God's power, how big is your God? Elisha's calming words, don't worry, don't worry. It demonstrates his profound faith in God and knowing God's unlimited resources. God is the ultimate authority. The Syrian king had plans, and they were revealed by God to his prophet, who told the king God's power to protect Elisha. It demonstrates his power to protect Israel and even to show mercy to his enemies, humbling them and offering them a path to him. That same God is working in your life and doing the same today. But there is also the importance of spiritual sight. We live in a world where people are spiritually blinded, and we fail to see God's work in the lives of the gospel. And that's where we need to be carrying the good news, the message. Elisha's prayer was an example of how God can open man's eyes and open people's eyes today. But I want us to see also God's kindness and his grace. He didn't kill these people. And it's only God's grace. It's only God's kindness. Even despite their hostile plans, Elisha and the king of Israel were protected. God's kindness is that central theme that we see here. His grace. Offering grace even to those who don't deserve it. How much is that like us? We don't deserve it. He turns enemies into friends. What a powerful contrast that we see here. Elijah's response to those captive soldiers was to feed them and let them go back and be a witness. Let them go back. He had disarmed them, and he offered them a chance to see the truth, and we don't know the impact that it might have had upon those soldiers' life. Have you met Jesus today? Because Jesus, whom we were once enemies with, has now given his life so that we could be friends, that we can be heirs, joint heirs with Jesus Christ. It's beyond our thoughts and our comprehension. God's grace and his mercy. Imagine to be able to look and see what only God could do, and he does it through his grace today.
Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed the message. We trust you have been encouraged, challenged, or generally built up spiritually. If this lesson has sparked questions, or perhaps you have questions of a different topic, let us know. Our information is given on the website, or you can reach us at sclofministry@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
The angel upon the tombstone said, "He is risen just as he said."